patience is a big thing, right? We can also say, just going into that, patience is a big thing. Parents are just like, oh, they get upset when I'm trying to feed them because they want to, eat so quickly, or I'm doing something and they can't just wait for me to get done with what I'm doing, right?
Right.
And so it's a lot of frustration on that end. But then when I speak with my parents, I also speak with them about the whole concept of, even as adults, we have difficulty with patience, right?
Exactly.
So we're looking out, right? So we'll look at our kids and we're like, oh, but they can't be patient. But let's think about this. The days that you have to go to the motor vehicles, right?
Right.
Or those days, the days that you have, in your mind, you're like, okay, I have to go to the doctor, right? And you're like, the appointment is at 11, but I know he's not going to see me till 1, right? You already know that.
Exactly.
There are just certain situations where you're already gearing yourself up because you're already feeling like it's going to be stressful, right? And so your threshold for being patient is really, really low, right? So it doesn't just span, it doesn't just, we're not looking at it from the perspective of, okay, well, children just can't be, can't be patient, but really all across the spectrum, it's really, really hard for us to be patient. And so, like I said, it was just an organic process. And I'm just like, well, what if we look at patience from a different point of view, right? How can we work this out? How can we look at it as, something of the perspective of having more self-control? How can we do that, right? And it's really trying to look at it from how can we have our children develop this skill set? What is the behavior that we really want them to exhibit, right? And so with many of my parents, this is something that I work on. And so just sitting there one day, I said, this sounds like something. And I got to the pen and the paper and started writing. Literally, I had a notebook and I just started writing.
But see that's the beauty about being an author and then being a self-published author. That it's amazing how, like I said, you can take what we do every day and we learn so much about who we are as individuals and then the people who surround us and who we help. And like you said, being around kids, teaching them patience, really as adults, we need that every day, because like you said, there's always that one little thing that'll drive you crazy. And then here you are, coming outside of yourself because we have no patience. And I can definitely tell you, I am one who has none. Okay. I have about that much. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I have to think, and then you think about how you feel and how you react afterwards sometimes. So I've definitely learned to bring some of that patience to a stop, to where I'm thinking about what I'm doing, what I'm saying before I do it and how I react, because we all know our reactions really tell a whole lot about who we are, right, as individuals.
Yes.
So, when you were with you dealing with special education children, I know that takes really a lot more patience because their understanding takes a little bit more time than what it would for, as we consider us normal, people who don't have special education issues. So when you decided to write this book, how did you connect all the dots with that? And then how does it work with your family or other friends and people that you are around who have those type of issues?
Well, I really just look at it as I mentioned, behavior. What's the behavior that we want, right? Every person, every child, everyone is different. So when we're looking at it, right, the skill set, like I said, is patience. And the situations might be different, right? So I'm taking it from the perspective of how can we get this child or how can we get this person to do what it is that we need for them to do in this particular time, right?
Exactly.
And so it's really looking at where they are and then getting them to the level that we want them to be at, right? So like typical things like in the book, I have tips and, small tips that we can use or whatever. But if you know that in general, your child, let's just say it's a, typical child, can only last maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes if you're going into the supermarket, right? You know that. And you're saying, okay, I really need to get these things. So in your mind, you decide to go take your child with you to the supermarket. You already know after 15 minutes, your child might start to have a tantrum or start saying, Mommy, when are we leaving? This and that. And so really what I start to talk with my parents about, or just in general to say, okay, well, how is it that we can go about using preventative measures, right? What can we put in place? If we know that it's only 15 minutes, right? Maybe you might try to say, okay, well, maybe you'll write a list so that you're more focused when you're in there, right? Rather than just going in there and saying, okay, I'm picking up this, I'm picking up that, because we all know we can go into Marshall's. We all know we can go into Costco. We know we can go to those stores and say, I'm picking up that one thing. And 3 hours later, the cart is like so full, right? Meanwhile, the baby hasn't eaten, the paper's not changed. You know what I mean? So we go off on our tangents, right? But if we go in there and we're focused and we're saying, okay, this is what we need to do, then we're in and out, right? But then the other thing to it is, if we know they can only be there for 15 minutes, let's just say 15, 20 minutes, then it's eventually starting to increase that time, right? Okay, so how do we do that? So we're going to try to just, think of some things that may be able to grab their attention while they're there, right? So maybe it might be singing songs, right? You've been on those road trips, right? With the kids.
Look, I'm not much of a road trip person, because my patience, if I'm a couple hours, I'm good. If you start going more than 4 or 5 hours, I don't know, I may be like one of those kids, like, are we there yet?
Are we there yet, right? But so you're asking the question too, because like, you told me to, and now it's 4. What's going on, right? So, but if you're in those situations where you're stuck in traffic, right, and there's really nothing you can do about it, you can either sit there and honk your horn, be one of those people who honk your horn, right, and like, oh, I just want to get out. Or you could be like, you know what?
Exactly.
I'm going to pull out that CD that I haven't listened to in a very long time, or I'm going to put on my YouTube or whatever it is, and I'm going to jam out, right? Yep. So you can figure out ways to work around it. So I'm looking at the situation, or I'm really looking at the skill set. What is it that I want? I want to increase the patience level of that child, that person. And then I'm just figuring out ways. What are some triggers that might set them off? What are some things that I have to do to, make it a more appropriate environment, so that I can get what it is that I need at that moment in time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I get that, and I hear you saying. I think a lot of times though, there are some kids, whether they have a special education issue or not, there are some kids that are truly out of control. And I think a big part of that is not even so much the child themselves. I think it's the foundation that is being brought to them. So when you have a child who comes from a foundation where they don't look at rules and regulations, or however you want to say rules, as being something that's a part of the forefront of your household, it makes it difficult to tell a child 1 minute, because like, for instance, I guess you could say in your environment as a special education person, you're teaching them everything the right way. But then what happens to that child who goes back to their own environment? How do you get them to maintain some of those things that you've taught them about patience and still make it fun? Because it's like, I think a part of, for me, when I think about children, because I used to do childcare centers years ago, and I always thought about, I've worked so hard to get these kids to a certain level, and then as soon as they walk out that door, they're going right back to their environment, and then they come back the next day, you're constantly starting all over again. What is your magic touch, so to speak, about how you handle those type of situations where a child is depending on their environment and what goes on in their household, how do you get them to come back to being normal the next day, so to speak? Two things. Consistency on our end. It usually, what happens is you can tell whether it's a professional, situation, or if it's just a friend, right? You can tell when the child is listening to a particular parent or listening to a particular person, right? You can tell where there's consistency in that, right? So let's say with you, right? The children, they're coming back, they know these are the particular rules Miss Kimberly has. These are the things, the expectations, Miss Kimberly has, right? So they know that when they're with you, these are the expectations that you have. So they act accordingly when they're with you, as you were saying, right? And then when they go home, it's a different story. But when they come back that next day, they may try it, but they know that with Miss Kimberly, these are the particular rules and expectations that you have in place. So overall, you might see that little dip in the behavior,
but they're going to come back and rise back because they know with you, this is what you expect, right?
Right.
And so the same thing. So if I'm sitting there with the children and I'm working with them, they know, okay, well, no, this is what we're doing. This is the expectation that I have for them. And so they rise to that occasion. But the other reason why they're rising to the occasion is because I'm consistently catching them when they're doing what it is that I need for them to do.
Exactly.
Right. So if I'm telling them, if I say, oh, you know what, let's say the baby or whoever's name is Marcus. If they're saying, oh, you know, Miss Jamie, I need, I want you to read this book. And I say to them, okay, give me 2 minutes, right? Or I need 3 minutes. And they say, okay, they're willing to wait. While they're waiting, I'll say, I'm almost done. Thank you so much for waiting. Right. So I'm praising them for what it is that I want to see. And so they're waiting. So I'm acknowledging them. I'm letting them know, I see you, boo. Right. I see what you're doing. Right. And I appreciate that. And when I come back, then I'm going to say, thank you so much for waiting. Right. And then the other thing about that, if you want to throw in a third thing is that I'm consistent with what it is I'm telling them I'm going to do. So if I'm telling you to wait and I say 5 minutes means 5 minutes. Right. That's and right. It can't be 5 minutes because it's also about respecting time. And you might say, oh, well, it's a kid. But what we're trying to do is model behavior, right? So if you're trying to model that behavior, it's important because then they'll do the same thing with you, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I say 5 minutes is 5 minutes. And if I can't deliver on my 5 minutes, I'm going to go back and say, you know what? Even if it's with my children, I'll say, you know what? I'm so sorry. I have, it's a little bit longer. Can you give mommy a little bit of extra time? So I'm letting them know there's communication. So it's not oh, you said, no, we discussed this. I'm letting you know what's happening so that you're aware, and it's communication. And the same thing, even if it's with my kids, if I say to them, you know what, let's say they're playing the game. And I say, okay, well, you know what, I need you to get off at 9:30, right? Mm-hmm. If they say to me, mommy, let's just say that's the time. Can I have 5 more minutes? Okay. You need 5 more minutes. So not 9:30, you want 9:35. So about 9:34, I'm coming back and I'm saying, okay, well, you said 9:35. So remember that. So 9:35 comes and they're turning it off because we had a discussion. There's communication. So on my end, I'm trying my best to be consistent, and on their end, they're being consistent. And so there's that. I respect you, you respect me. And right. So that's what helps.
And that does absolutely help with the child because you guys are connecting together. But has there been times where you have had to reconnect with the parent to teach them some of those tips and show them this is how you engage with your child and this is how you get to the end result that you're looking for. So talk a little bit about that. But before you do, let me just tell everybody, if you have not been listening, you have been missing a great show. We have our special guest here, author Jamie Johnson-Tavera. She is hanging out with us this evening. We were talking about her book, which I'm going to show shortly. But before I show you the book, go ahead and answer that question that I just asked in reference to how do you deal with those parents that are not being as consistent and they need to have some of those tips?
You know, I think a lot of it comes from, it's hard for us as a whole to see that there possibly might be some change, just in general, right? It's like, you know, you go on a diet and you're like, it's taking so long to see this change. You start something, new venture, and it's like it's taking so long, right? So then to put specific goals in place and then expect it to happen overnight is hard, right? Exactly. And so it's sitting down, having that game plan and saying, look, these are the things that we're working on. And even if you do see that the child has a tantrum, even if you see that there's been a little bit of a dip like we talked about, understand if you're still being consistent, it will work, right? So then we start going over and talking about, okay, well, it didn't happen. So, or the child had, some type of tantrum or whatever. Okay, so we talk about all the things that might have led up to that. And then we're able to see, maybe they had this, tantrum because, they were waiting to have some, let's say they were in the, let's say they wanted to play something, right? Or let's say the mom is on the phone. Let's just say mom is on the phone. That's a simple, situation. Mom is on the phone. They're trying to, get their attention. Mom is like, okay, I'm coming. But remember, we talked about consistency. If you said you were going to go back, you didn't go back. So once we start talking about the behavior, we're able to look at it and say, okay, maybe this is where it stemmed from, right? So a lot of it has to do with reflection and going back. But then also saying, you know what, Mom, you did a good job reflecting right now. You were able to sit back and see exactly what happened. And so now we're able to try our best not to repeat that, because nobody's perfect, right?
Right.
So, and then there are times where it's just like, oh, you know, I don't see how this is going to happen. I don't understand. I totally understand, you know. But what's important is to see how, if we can continue to do it, right, what the outcome would be, right?
Exactly.
And so it's important not to just walk away because you don't see exactly what you want to see at that moment. And when we're looking at behavior, a lot of times you're going to see some change, and then it's going to increase, right? And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, everything is changing. But there's always that hiccup, right? So when that hiccup comes, it's like, oh my gosh, was it really something that I did? Like, or, they're regressing. There's something. No. It's just a hiccup. It's just a hiccup.
It's just a part of
it.
They are. And
it's just part of the process.
Reminding and constant consistent. But like I said, I think, it's usually children always, like you said, replicate what they see. So 90% of the time, it's usually the parent that they see do something differently. Like you said, if they say they're going to do something, they don't do it, that child is always going to react. Because, back in our days of growing up, it's always, as a child, all you do is you can't speak, you just listen and you watch. You stay in a child's lane at a place, we didn't have the option of, well, go and do this. No, I said to sit here and that's it. And you didn't question that, even though, you didn't understand, why was it being done that way? But that was how the difference of being raised, and how, that it wasn't so much fun. This was just the way it was, so it's very different as of today. And then, like you said, that when you're dealing with children who are special education, you have to have a different process. You cannot always use the same process. And that's with any child. I mean, I think about my son when he was growing. I always think about how I raised my son when he was growing up. He's one of those young men. Of course, he's a grown man now, but when he was younger, it was one of those things of, you could not scream at him, you could not yell at him, you could not tell him, well, you're going to do this and you're going to do it that way. You really had to sit back and look at his reactions, and he was one that would just totally shut down if you raised your voice, if you did not talk and explain, okay, this was it. It was not one of those kids where you had to be like, feel like you're always threatening, because some parents literally threaten their kids to get their point across, right? So I think that's just amazing. I like how you are handling the situation. And Rex, really, I think it all stems back to the parents. But before we go any further, I want to show your book so you can talk more about your book. Okay. So we're gonna pull that up here. So it's in the middle of this. Woo! So everybody, look at the book, and I'm gonna. Let me pick off a couple of things, but talk to us a little bit about the book and how did you actually come up with the title?
Well, I'm a big person in thinking of what something is and not looking at what something isn't, right? And so I could have said, being patient is the worst, right. Or I hate waiting, you know what I mean? But I really didn't want to speak in negatives. I really wanted to look at it from the perspective of what it was that was going on in the book, and really just thinking of it as, okay, well, how can we be more positive with our time, right? It's really about you're stuck in this situation, you can't get out of it. You really have to wait, like we said, whether it's from an adult perspective or from a child's perspective. There are going to be situations where you have to wait. So now you could be the one who's like Scrooge and be like, oh, I'm not going to deal with this, and even as an adult have that tantrum. Or you could be like, you know what? I'm going to be in this doctor's office for about 3 hours. I know I have some business paperwork to do. I know I can sit here and do my crossword puzzle. I can get back on my Netflix while I'm sitting there. I can be more productive with my time, right? Exactly. And so it's the same thing, like we talked about modeling behavior. If your child, there's going to be days. It's just life. Your child wants to do something, and you're not going to be able to do it right then and there. And so instead of saying, no, we can't do it at all, if it's something you really want to do with them, being able to say to them, okay, we can't do it right now, but mommy or daddy can do it with you at this time. In the meantime, what is it that you can do to occupy your time, right?
Exactly.
It makes more sense, right? Because now they're being productive. They're learning how to utilize their time, right? We know that you're either in life, you're you're spending money, right? Or you're spending your time, right? And so you want to be able to invest your time. And so by being able to show them and model for them the best way to do it, you're really showing them a better skill set. You know, you're really preparing them. And so that was really the concept behind it. Really being able to look at, having to wait, not from a negative viewpoint, but from a positive, and seeing how you can utilize your time more effectively.
Yeah, and I like that. And you're right, because a lot of times we do look at everything as being negative first before we can look at the positive. But I just, when I look at the cover, I just love what it says. Being patient can be fun. But the thing that really stood out for me was the kids and the ice cream. Yeah. It's fun. It's like, ooh, yeah, I'm going to get some ice cream. So I'm thinking to myself when I originally seen it, wow, is I'm going to get something good, for being a good kid, or how does this all work out? So, it really has a very positive effect. And I think that's always the great thing about, when we as authors decide to come up with our cover, it's usually those covers are what draw people to you. It's not always just the name of the book, but it's everything else, because you're trying to figure out how it all comes together. So you did a phenomenal job putting that together. Yeah. I mean, it just, like I said, it makes sense, and once you understand the whole story behind it, it really truly does come together nicely. So congratulations on that. So tell us where we can actually find the book, and how can we find you, and and get all the things that we need to learn more about for those parents who may need to reach out to you.
This is the fun part. So well, the whole thing has been fun. See, I've been patient, right?
You have. So, you've done good. You were so nervous earlier, like, oh my gosh.
I know. I'm like, Okay. So I am, my website is jamietavera.com. And the book, you can see the book or find the book on Amazon. It is currently an ebook, and I'm working on getting it into print. So I'm excited about that. Okay. I'm also on Instagram as Joy Nation Mom, and I'm on Facebook as Joy Nation Moms. Okay. So on Joy Nation Mom, I just put up mom tips and funny things and little things about me and motivation. And I do the same thing, and it's a private Facebook group. I do the same thing there. But the difference is that I also do mini talks about different subjects. Like we've talked about bullying. We've talked about, the topic over the summer was who's in control. Now that the kids are back in the house, now it's like really, getting things back in order, right? Now that they're back in the house. So we talked about that. So just a variety of different topics that I also add into the Facebook group as well. So that's exciting.
I like that. And I love the Facebook group, because I like the topics that you're talking about. The topics actually roll right into exactly what the book is about. So that is awesome. It really, and people need that, today, the world we live in, everything is just consistently going so fast that people just sometimes need that extra help, to get themselves back to as they feel normal, but still be able to do the things that they're doing, because that's just the world we live in. So, it's great that you have that group. And, for those who need that type of help, reach out to author Jamie Johnson-Tavera. I'm telling you, she's going to give you the tips you need to have. And especially for those who feel very overwhelmed when they have a child who does have special needs. And even though a child does not have special needs, I'm telling you, we all have special needs in our own special type of way. So
we're all special.
Yeah,
for real, we are all special.
Absolutely.
Everybody needs something.
Absolutely, yes. So there's no child that's perfect. There's no parent or family that's perfect. But at the same time, when you feel like you need to reach out and you need some help, reach out to those experts out here, because that's what we're here for. And that's what Jamie is here for. She's got, like I said, a phenomenal book. Please reach out and get your book at Amazon. So also, before we close down, I mean, gosh, I can't believe how quickly time goes. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Do you have any events coming up, or any other programs or shows or anything that you'd like to share with the listeners tonight?
Well, you know what? I am in a mix of working on a meet and greet for my Joy Nation Moms group. So that'll be exciting. I'm hoping to aim for November, right before the holidays. Exactly before things start getting really stressful for us as moms and as parents. The other thing is, I will be translating the book into Spanish, so that'll be exciting.
Awesome.
Right, right.
Definitely.
And
Right.
yes, I will definitely be doing that. And then I am. I also wrote another book, so I'll be working on that one, and that should be hopefully coming out next year as well.
Oh,
And that one,
well, I guess
that
that
one will be
means.
called. Yes, that one
Go
will be
ahead.
called "No Thank You, I Can Help Myself."
Well, I guess that's another opportunity for you to come back on the show and talk about your new book,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
Awesome. I always
Thank you.
love I always love the serial entrepreneurs and the serial authors, as I call them, so that's great. So I'm looking forward to having you come back on the show. Source
Oh, thank
Nation,
you.
I definitely want to say thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. It has been such a pleasure. And like I said, for those who need help or and have a child that it needs that little bit more extra attention, but also teaching them the right way versus the wrong way of how to handle that attention is always most important. So reach out to author Jamie Johnson-Tavera. You can find her on any of the social media outlets. And then, of course, you can find me as well. So before we, of course, go out, I want to thank the sponsors one more time for allowing me to have this awesome show. So we want to say thank you again to Lulina Health, Wellness, and Fitness, Meet My Types Matchmaking, Renovations, and New Covenant of Praise Worship. And then also, if you are interested in being a sponsor and or a guest on the Office Corner, please send me a email. If you want to be a guest as an author on the show, I would like for you to send me a short bio, a book cover, and a professional pic. You can send it to Kimberly M. McLemore at gmail.com. That's Kimberly, Kimberly, MORE at gmail.com. And, if you would like to be a guest and if you're interested truly in wanting to be a sponsor, this is a great opportunity for us to talk about you on your show. So please reach out to me in that format. And also, you can find me at all the social media platforms. This show is being right now on Facebook Live on the authors platform. So, hey, it's great. I've enjoyed having you on tonight. Again, thank you. And for everyone else here at Source Nation, join me next week for another amazing show. Until next time, have a good evening.